I was saying, Joy Taylor, every dog has its day, and since I'm a big dog, I've got 2 days.
Okay.
So now.
You just called yourself a dog?
Yeah, I'm a dog. Yeah, I'm a big dog, a big one.
Kevin Durant is 6'11", who can pull up from 40. Okay. This brother is on that level. I'm talking about offensively.
Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
I'm better than you.
Welcome to episode 47 of the Lowdown Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I have another special guest on the show. He's a highly talented sports writer. His name is Brendan Meyer. He's a freelancer at the moment, but he does work for ESPN, Bleacher Report, Dallas Morning News, any major platform you can think of. His most recent article is out on ESPN about Landry Jones being possibly the face of the XFL. So in this episode, Brendan will break down the article inch by inch and talk about Landry Jones' legacy at Oklahoma, the NFL, and now the XFL. He's playing with his former head coach in college, Bob Stoops. So you don't want to miss this one. Check it out.
And we're live on the phone lines, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Lowdown episode. And I have a very special guest on the show. And this is no ordinary special guest. I'm talking about this guy's a freelance writer. And he's done articles for ESPN, Bleacher Report, the Dallas Morning News. I mean, pretty much everywhere. I mean, he's all over the place. Very talented. His name is Brendan Meyer. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. So, obviously, the XFL is about to start in a couple of days, and then I noticed you wrote a story about Landry Jones possibly being the face of the XFL. So how do you feel about the story so far?
I think the story's gone well so far. It's an interesting new league, although this is not really a new idea, spring football leagues in general. So, I don't know, this kind of previews this uncertainty that Landry and really everyone else in this league is about to kind of venture off into.
Exactly. And then, I mean, knowing that he's playing for the Dallas Renegades, I mean, his head coach, Bob Stoops, was also his head coach in college. So these guys already have camaraderie with each other. So that means Landry Jones is known for about 10 years at this point, at least 10 years. And to see that he's played for Bob Stoops before, so he can tell that the Renegades, you can see, like, the connection between the two. And he could possibly put up some really good numbers like he did when he was in college.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of familiarity with Stoops and Landry, as well as, I don't know, it definitely helps him commit to this league compared to kind of holding out and waiting for an NFL job. He trusts and respects Bob Stoops. And even though these secondary football leagues haven't exactly worked out in the past, I think having Bob Stoops on board really solidified Landry's decision to go off and try something new.
Yeah, it really did, because, I mean, he was released about a year ago, around February 2019 from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and to hear him get that call from the XFL, I'm pretty sure that made him, that definitely changed his mindset, because that must be a tough blow knowing that you get released by a team, especially professionally, especially if you still have a drive to play and that passion to play football, especially professionally, and then knowing that Bob Stoops, the XFL gave him a call shortly after that, shows that his career wasn't over just yet, and he still has time on his hands. He's in his early 30s, so you can definitely see him just prospering in the XFL.
For sure, yeah. He was released, I think it was September of 2018, and so he didn't hear from Bob Stoops until February 2019. So
it took time.
So yeah,
you're right.
So he had this kind of miserable, I guess, handful of months where he was kind of in a no man's land trying to find a job and hopefully a job in football, but it wasn't easy at all. He was a backup for 5 years in Pittsburgh behind Ben Roethlisberger, which was a situation obviously he couldn't really control. I mean, he got drafted behind one of the best quarterbacks and most durable quarterbacks in the NFL at that time. And so he never really got a chance to play. So when he was a free agent, there just wasn't a huge, urgency to get Landry Jones on your team. So while everyone at the Steelers spoke very highly of him, he just kind of found himself in a no man's land position. So he was interested when he got a phone call from Bob Stoops, but he's also skeptical at the same time, just because these spring football leagues have never worked before. There's a reason why there's no spring football league right now and no supplemental football league right now. It's because they all run out of money at some point.
Exactly, and then knowing that they're about the season kickoff is actually this weekend. Well, the Renegades don't play until Sunday. They'll be playing St. Louis. As a matter of fact, that'll be on ESPN at 4:00. the opening game. So opening weekend will be Houston and LA versus Seattle. Seattle is going against DC. So seeing the Renegades, I feel like the Renegades might have the most popularity out of all the teams, knowing that Bob Stoops is coaching them. He's probably the biggest name out of all the other coaches that are in this league.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, because think about it, it's been 19 years since the XFL. The last time the XFL had a season, this is back in 2001 around this time, and then it turned out to be a bust. But I'm hoping maybe this year could be completely different. Think about it. It's a whole new generation of people or kids watching the XFL. Because back 19 years ago, so whoever was watching it then, they're all probably in late 20s, early 30s, because people who are in their early to mid 20s probably don't even remember the XFL debut back then. So to see them just resurrect the program with a new face, and plus utilizing social media and everything, it could be completely different.
For sure. I think it is going to be completely different. I think the question is just, are people going to pay to go, and are people going to watch it? But it sounds like Vince McMahon and co. have learned their lesson from 20 years ago. And Oliver Luck, the CEO and commissioner, he's got a very clear focus this time around. He wasn't involved in the first iteration of the XFL, but Vince McMahon made it very clear that the focus is on football. It's not going to be gimmicky. Last time the XFL came out in 2001, it was kind of packaged as a more violent and sexier alternative to the NFL, and this is not going to be that at all. It sounds like this is going to be very football-centric, and what you see on TV is going to be very familiar to what you see on TV on an NFL Sunday. There are going to be some slightly different rules that are going to help with pace of play and help with just scoring in general. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting possibility. They've had 2 years to get this thing up and running, compared to 2001, where they only had 1 year to get it up and running. And at the end of the day, this all comes down to money. And Vince McMahon has already said that he's willing to pledge $500 million to see this succeed. So it's very intriguing, and it's got a lot of momentum. They're playing some pretty legit stadiums and in cities that have established football markets. I know St. Louis doesn't have a football team right now, but I think their ticket sales are doing better than everybody else's because they lost their team to Los Angeles, the Rams, a few years ago, and the fans are really excited about having football back in town. So I don't know. I hope it succeeds. It'd be really interesting, and there are a lot of diehard football fans out there that from February to September are without their favorite sport.
Yeah, that is a long off season. So to see football still at hand for the next couple of months will definitely just keep their eyes open. And plus, it's still gonna be a long gap. Even at the end, during the post week, I'm assuming they have a playoff system, and during that time, it'll overlap with basketball because basketball starts the playoffs around that time too. So you'll see it overlap, and so that means and then Major League Baseball starts real soon. So there'll be a lot of sports going on these next few. Months, as a matter of fact. So the year 2020 could change everything in that case. To see this, especially with these social media platforms and all these jobs that these media personnel have, because you see that there are so many jobs in the media realm, especially for sports, that I feel like everybody does a great job when it comes to keeping people, just informed of what's going on in the sports world. You can look at it at the palm of your hand, and especially there's a lot of writers, including you guys, very talented writers like you, that are out there putting out articles day in and day out, and sometimes maybe 2 articles a day, sometimes even more than that, just depending how busy they are. And to see the story that you wrote, it's a prime example of what it's the prime example of what the XFL could possibly be. Because for example, if you Google XFL ESPN, the first story that pops up is yours, as a matter of fact, and then it's a long article and it's about Landry Jones, as a matter of fact, and then you see that he could possibly be the face of the NFL going off the title of your article shows how much passionate this man is. And then I noticed halfway through the story I remember you wrote something about how he didn't really have a plan of what he had in mind, without football, because he's been so used to playing football. Think about it, this guy's been playing football just about his whole life since he was a kid, and he just couldn't really picture life without football. And knowing that you said he went through that 6-month gap and not knowing what's going to happen, and then when he received that call, I'm pretty sure that was a dream come true, knowing that he has a family and a wife. Yeah,
so he got this call, and his dream was to play in the NFL. And there's a quote in the story that says that, to this day, he could still never really close the door on the NFL if that opportunity presented itself. But this is a really good opportunity for Landry right now. He's getting paid decently well in the XFL, and he's driving to the stadium and then driving back home. His off-season home is in Fort Worth, so he's about a 40-minute commute to the stadium. He's excited. But again, there's just a lot of unknowns surrounding this, which is what makes this kind of fascinating and what makes this very different from if Landry Jones was a backup for the Dallas Cowboys.
Exactly. And then, so how did it feel? Because you interviewed him head up, correct?
Yeah.
So how did it feel actually speaking to Landry Jones about his life and his legacy and his career leading into the final moments of the season for the XFL?
I think he's excited, but again, I would say that everyone is skeptical about the XFL. The players, the coaches, the fans. I mean, we all just don't know what's going to happen. This could be an extreme success, or this could fall in the same pattern of literally every other secondary football league, which is failure. So people are cautiously optimistic, but there is a lot of skepticism on, is this going to boom or bust? And I guess the good thing with Vince McMahon pledging that amount of money is that it doesn't sound like the XFL is going to go for one season and then close up shop if they don't get the results they want. I think they realize that, it might take a couple of years to get this thing off the ground running. But they've got a lot of momentum, and they do have a lot of big-name guys. A lot of these guys could go off and get different jobs if they succeed in the XFL. I mean, that was one thing that I kind of touched on in my story is that if you have a star running back or a star quarterback or a star head coach, that's a very attractive piece for a college football team in terms of coaching and an NFL team in terms of players. So, or even for coaching for NFL. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens, but I mean, if there's a superstar this year in the XFL, don't be surprised to see that superstar on an NFL team the following year. And then the question is, how does the XFL replace these guys and kind of keep fans coming in and not realizing, I don't know, I guess it's hard to build a brand around a certain player because, I don't know, it's volatile. They could leave. So that's a good point right there, because how do you think the XFL will turn out, especially as far as the Renegades go with Stoops and the Stoops and Landry Jones punch? So how do you feel like Landry Jones can lead his team to a winning season? I think they're a great duo together. It's just a matter of, I don't know. They have Hal Mummy as their offensive coordinator. He's in charge of the air raid offense. They've got a good offense. I think Landry's going to be throwing the ball a bunch. But yeah, he and Stoops have a phenomenal rapport, and that is really important to note. I wouldn't be surprised to see Landry have a great season. I mean, he tweaked his knee during training camp, and he's likely to miss this upcoming Sunday, and hopefully he'll be back by the following Sunday. But I wouldn't be surprised if he put up big numbers. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's got fresh legs. He obviously didn't take too many hard hits during his time in the NFL. And yeah, I think he's got a good opportunity to really show what he's capable of doing compared to that not being the case in the NFL. I'm just kind of waiting on the sidelines and hoping to get a chance to play.
So you're saying basically, obviously, since he's coming off an injury, so you're saying that these guys, not only Landry Jones, but any player that's in the XFL at this point, has a possibility of moving back up. Say they bump down to the XFL, and do you think they have a possibility of moving back up to the NFL? You think they can get picked up at any point?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, how the contracts work is that, if you sign a contract with the XFL, you're kind of locked in for that season. But once the season ends, I think the season ends in about April or so. It's a 10-week season. Then they're free to sign wherever they want to go. So the XFL season is going to be done well before, I think, right around OTAs for the NFL.